Hello, I'd like to start today by reading the haiku that is on my shirt. It says, "Haikus are easy, but sometimes they don't make sense." Refrigerator. Now that is a 575 paragraph or syllable stanza, and that is typical of haikus. But it is just a good introduction into the real topic that I want to discuss today, and that is humor and culture and poetry among computer programmers. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you just Google right away computer programming humor or funny computer programs, you'll find a million things. Like here's a Pinterest page that shows a bunch of memes with programming humor, and I'm not going to read them all, but you can see that there's a lot of them. As long as there's been programming languages, there's been programming humor. This is kind of a timeline of April Fool's jokes that, this post is probably 15 years old now, but you can see that they happen quite often. This first one, though, is one that I think was kind of interesting in the Perl community. This is one of the first times serious poetry started getting attention, and it was meant to be an April Fool's joke, but Larry Wall is actually the founder or the creator of Perl. He initially posted an article or a request to Usenet, which was essentially the internet at the time, to create a new category of news that would, under either arts, recs, poems, or actually he requests a couple different places, new places to post Perl poetry or poems. Because he is claiming that people are needing a place to put their Perl poetry. And of course this was meant to be a joke at the time, but he couldn't have said it better at the top of his request when he says, "It has come to my attention that there is a crying need for a place for people to express their emotional and technical natures simultaneously." I think he couldn't have said that any better. It is exactly right. Like, he spends so much time with the code that it becomes a part of you, and you think in those terms, and you have need to express yourself because we're all human. Programmers have need to express their emotions, either love or jokes, in ways that are not what the language was initially intended for. And so even though Larry Wall was absolutely just joking with this particular request, it had real implications. And since he made this request, Perl Monks, which is like the website for where all the Perl programmers go to view, to get help and to post information, they have a category called Perl Poetry, where people have posted their poems, and just some things are funny, some things are serious, but it all kind of started from this one post. And it's interesting because he claims in this request that here's an example from a graduate student, a haiku. Here's another from another student in Fort Lauderdale, and then he claims this one to be from a person who wishes to remain anonymous. But this is actually a poem that has become kind of famous called Black Perl, and I'll read it here in a minute. But I also want to point out that he also includes this one, which he wrote, or he accredits himself to writing, and this one is supposedly the first Perl poem ever published anywhere, and it's it's really kind of simple and silly, but print standard out Q, just another Perl hacker, and less $spring. That supposedly is the first Perl poem ever written. Yeah. Anyway, but I want to show you this one called Perl, Black Perl, on a different page because it's in color on this page. So I'll just read this briefly because it's kind of interesting. Beforehand, close door, each window and exit. Wait until time. Open spellbook, study, read, scan, select, tell us, write it, print the hex while each watches, reverse its length, write again, kill spiders, pop them, chop, split, kill them, unlink arms, shift, wait and listen, listening, wait, sort the flock, then warn the goats, and kill the sheep, kill them, dump qualms, shift moralities, values aside each one, die sheep, die to reverse the system, you accept, reject, respect, next step, kill the next sacrifice, each sacrifice, wait, redo ritual until all the spirits are pleased, do it, as they say, do it, everyone must participate in forbidden sex, return last victim, package body, exit crypt, time, times and half a time, and close it, select quickly, and warn your next victim, afterwards tell nobody, wait until time, wait until next year, next decade, sleep, die yourself, die at last. So obviously that's kind of dark, but I think it was meant to be comical because of all the words in the Perl language that are sort of dark, like kill and die and warn, and it was using the words that are reserved words, which in this case are all green, they're all Perl reserved words, to make up a poem. And so it's just telling of the kind of sense of the language, just by the choice of words. And I think it's kind of interesting, even though I believe it was just a joke, and honestly, I don't know who wrote it, although I suspect it was probably Larry himself. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's interesting. I think it's a pretty interesting choice of word selection. So, but it was actually discussed a couple of years later by Sharon Hopkins, who also became a prolific Perl poet, I guess. But she wrote this paper talking about the poetry and why Perl happens to be a good program for writing poetry in, whereas others don't lend themselves to be as poetic just because you are forced to put certain things in them. But she included that Black Perl in her paper. She referenced it, and she talked about what types of Perl programs, the various types of Perl program or Perl poems that there could be, and the difficulties in writing them, and it's sort of interesting. But from there, it just the Perl poetry world sort of exploded for a while, and since in these days it's slowed down a lot. There's only a few poems that have been reported on Perl monks each year anymore, but it exploded for a while. That repository on Perl monks has been read and evaluated every so often, and the last time I saw a good evaluation was in 2014, so it's been a number of years. So I kind of wanted to go back through and review some of these myself. And I picked out a few of the ones that I liked. This is a winner of the one in 2014, the last contest, I guess. It's called Fish Dinner. It says, use carp, unpack fish, spices, croak fish if alive, study recipe, pop in, time, begin meal, tide bib, scalar fish, fork, split, squirt lemon, glob tartar sauce, chop, open mouth, chomp, unlink flesh, truncate bone, chomp, untie bib, push plate, end meal, sleep now. Pretty good collection of words to describe what it is to cook and eat a fish dinner. So I thought that was pretty creative, and it's real simple, and it obviously won over a number of people 6 years ago as well. So, but more recently, oh no, I guess this is an old one too. But so this is an example of a real simple love poem though. It's just require Perl 5.8.8 and my heart. Join her and love or die alone. Real simple. But there's a whole genre of love poetry as well. And here's another example, which this one I kind of liked. My Heart, a poem by the Elite Noob. So I equals you equals I, love, you plus I, or you and I. My heart, you make my heart flutters. If I not with you, heart just breaks. Me just thinks of you. Well, me and you, I'm sad when not with you. Happy with you, my love. May it last forever. While me and you equal love, me happy and not sad, last forever. My love, you love I, print my love. And then if you actually run this, it prints out I love you, which I think is kind of cool. And it's a little dorky, come on, but at the same time, it's what you can do with few words. It's pretty good. So here's another. This one's different. Getting out of the love genre. There's also quotes, or this is a common quote that people say, or a saying, I guess. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Excuse me. So even though this is 0, it's the first element in the list. So kind of dorky, but kind of funny. This one I like a lot. Do, and then 2 pipes means or. This means not, so do or do not, and there is no try. Do or do not, there is no try. This one, so in art there is expressionism, and in Perl there are regular expressions, and they have the form of the slash, and it's not just in Perl. There's a lot of languages that use this, but this is like the first thing that you're checking, and this is the replacement. But this is a common thing. And then the ISM, this is how you interpret the expression, but this is a common choice of letters too. So, but I love it because it's a regular expressionism, which is a form of art in itself. So it's so simple, but it's beautiful. This one is so simple. And it makes you, I don't know, just makes me laugh. Go to sleep. So 10 years after Black Pearl, Damien Conway, who actually is another Perl master, he wrote a book called Perl Best Practices. He's done a bunch of stuff, a lot of things in Perl, in the Perl community. But he wrote this prize-winning koi module which was essentially a drop-in replacement for carp, which is something that is used to report error messages essentially, and kind of when the program dies, it's supposed to also help spit out some information about where it is in the program, so that the programmer can figure out what's going on a little bit easier. But carp has a lot of things in it. A lot of people use carp, but it has some kind of negative terms that are typically used. And so instead of using carp, you use this koi module instead that Damien wrote, and it says apparently, well, the documentation of course is written as a haiku poem, but it does the same sort of thing. It prints out error messages, but it does it in a poem, in poem form. And so the documentation in it itself says the Koi Perl module brings tranquility to your debugging. The module alters the behavior of die and warn, which is what carp does, and croak and carp. It also provides transcend and enlighten, two Zen alternatives. So it's more of a positive alternative to using die and warn and croak. And like carp, Koi reports errors of the caller's point of view, but it prefaces the bad news of failure with a soothing haiku. So this is a great addition of art into a programming culture, and I think it's quite amazing, and it's a complicated program, and somebody wrote it, so I wanted to pay tribute to that. And then let's see what else. Here, this was another little haiku contest that happened in 2000 that the winner wrote a subroutine called Summer, with a haiku called Summer, but it actually is a summer, so it adds whatever you add to it to itself, or to the last thing that you added to it, so it sums things. So it's really interesting. It's summer, my sum, that's 5. Sum plus equals this for that. I guess that's how you might say it. Sum, print, summer, split. Anyway, I thought it was kind of clever, so I wanted to share that. The next, though, this is one of my favorite, more recent ones in 2012. Well, not that recent, but somewhat recent. This is just another Perl hacker, or Perl haikuer is what the title of this poem is, I guess. But really, it's just this sub haiku right here, and it's the subroutine itself is in haiku. It's word. Let's see, word equals shift join. Oh wait, word equals shift join. Word times 5 dot new line shift. Word times 2 shift. So that's the haiku, which doesn't really mean anything. And then you print, when you run it, print haiku foo. I'll show you what it does. It's foo 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 foo. Or, it's just foos, but this is a haiku, so the result is a haiku of foo, which is totally ridiculous, but I think it's great. It's one of my favorites. But what's actually interesting, though, is how this is done. If you are a Perl programmer, this is more complicated than it looks. It's worth a look at, but I'm not going to get into that. The next one is actually not a programming joke, but it was written by a programmer. It's not joke, but it's kind of a joke and a poem in one. It's a haiku. It's the integral of e to the x equals f of u to the n, which is a haiku. And actually, I think I have this is what that looks like. So I've seen this many times. This is a math joke, you know. It looks like sex equals fun, obviously, but going back to this though, what I love about it is the author's comment on it. He says, I came upon this great realization today that one of the best math equations ever is also a haiku. Whoa, mama, I think I might be nearing enlightenment. Anyway, I thought it was clever. So, moving on. Here's an example of poetry in a different language. I think this is C, or maybe C sharp. Or, yeah, I mean, it could be any language at this point. Like, they're all starting to get to be similar. But, just kind of an example. Somebody put it onto a pillow. And I've seen poetry on cups, mugs, and it's expanded all over the place. It's it's everywhere. But I also stumbled across there's a contest that happens every year. Well, not every year, most years, called the International Obfuscated C Code Contest, where people try to create the most obfuscated code, which means the most complicated, hard to interpret, hard to read, but interesting pieces of code that actually compile and do some. Well, I guess they don't have to do something, but some of these are really interesting. What what people have come up with, and they have length, file size limitations, on the requirements of the contest. And so, like, this one here, I thought was really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of them are interesting, but they wrote a flight simulator in 1998 that is just a few kilobytes. This is the entire code right here, what you see, and it's a flight simulator. But I think the way it was presented in the form of this shape of an airplane is just brilliant. To me it's absolutely art. But okay, I had to discuss this, but I think it's a great place for people. I mean, some of these are brilliant minds who have won this contest, and it's worth exploring these concepts and these ideas. But so I wanted to point that out. But in that same note, like, a lot of it is just these guys are having fun. They're stretching the limits of code and interest in it, and a lot of languages themselves have been written just as a joke, and just for general interest and the art of creating code and languages that are for art only, for art's sake. Like, here's a whole list of languages on Wikipedia that are totally just esoteric languages that are not really meant to be useful, basically. And I know that this is not even a complete list. There's a number of languages that have been added, or that I know about, or like there's a Donald Trump language now. This is not a complete list, but like, for instance, look at the name right here, brainfuck. These are crazy languages that people have come up with. Like, here's how that in brainfuck, whatever. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. This is how you would print "Hello World," which is impossible to interpret, as a human. Like, it would take you, I don't know. I mean, if you get into it, I'm sure it might make sense, but it's like a puzzle, But some of these I thought were interesting. here's one called lol code, which is actually one of the most functional of these languages that are listed here, but it's designed to resemble the speech of lolcats. So here's a hello world example. It's hi. Ken has studio or st standard IO visible. Hi world. Okay, thanks. Bye. If you go into the documentation for how lol code works, it's pretty good. It's not extensive. It doesn't have a lot of support for arrays or anything like that, but it has some basic functionality, and you can do something. And it's got basic controls in it, so it could be useful for certain things. But some of these others are really interesting too. This one I don't really understand completely, but apparently pictures like this are the code, and there's an algorithm for tracing around these squares, and it's the algorithm traces, and then it gets to a black line, and it has to turn directions, and it can travel through white lines. And there's 18 colors that are like reserved words, and they mean something, but other colors mean something else, or whatever you want them to mean. And so here's this is a picture that would print Piet. This is a picture that would print hello world, which is really fascinating to me. I don't know if I could ever program anything in that, but it's really creative concept. And then Pikachu is another language that I thought was kind of funny. It consists of just 3 words. Everything that you type has to be in these 3 words. You can only, it's combinations of these 3 words: Pika, and Pikachu. And so if you go to the website, and the example to print out hello world is like 3 pages long of Pika, and Pikachu. It's ridiculous. It would be really hard to program in that language, honestly, but it's funny. They could have chose 1, 2, and 3, but instead they made it Pikachu, or Pika, and Pikachu. So I thought it was kind of clever and worth mentioning. Anyway, but all these, here's another one that's all the code, just like Pikachu has 3 words essentially. White space also has 3 words: space, tab, and return, which are all white space characters. And so you can't see it. You can't see any of the spaces. So you could actually hide that among other characters, which are all regular characters are ignored. They're just comments. So you could hide code in the middle of like a text file or something with this code. So it's really pretty interesting. But is that really practical? I don't know. Maybe if you're a spy espionage, but most likely it's an obfuscation. It's an esoteric language is really what it is. But it's art. To me, all these languages are just art. And so that's why I wanted to talk about them. And finally, just to end, I wanted to share with you this comical software package that was discussed on this court's website. It's called Is13, and that's all it does. It's just a software package that checks whether a number is equal to 13. And ordinarily, that would be a really simple thing to do in any programming language. It would look something like this, right in here. But they have decided they wanted to poke fun of what it takes to package any particular module or something to a language, so other people can use it. Typically, there's a lot of work that has to be done in order to make it publishable for other people to use. And so they made the most simple possible program and made it extraordinarily long, because that's what you generally have to do, and it's a statement of the unnecessary work that is required to do such a thing. And it's really meant to be a joke, but it's really a piece of art in a sense, because it's interesting, you know. It goes on to say that this particular project is comprised of hundreds of lines of code, 92 contributors, which I'm sure there's probably more at this point, and a code of conduct policy, all for a software package. You know, it just, all it does is check if a number is equal to 13. And you know, it says down here that the best part is of the is13 project is the section of the GitHub repository where people can post questions, comments, and feature requests. Here are just a few. Add support for Roman numeral 13. Add support for the movie 13. I don't really get why what Olivia Wilde has to do with 13, but maybe she was in 13. I don't know. Anyway, remove support for Friday the 13th. Create a technical steering committee. Add deep learning. Does it scale? You know, and each of these things are like typical questions that you would hear at a corporation about a particular software package. You know, add deep learning. You know, that would be reasonable perhaps for a seriously large program. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what that would be. Like maybe like Black Magic movie studio or something, you know, something where it has to learn the user's behavior, you know, and track that and make decisions based on a user's behavior. So but the concept of applying that to this particular package of is13 is absolutely ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. So I wanted to point this out because I thought it was funny, and I hope you do too. And that's it for today. Thank you to all the programmers for all that you do, and keep the art going. Good luck and have a good day. I have two YouTube channels, both of which contain essentially the same content. One contains the longer versions of my videos, which you're watching now. The other contains shorter 1-minute versions. So if you'd prefer to subscribe to the channel with the shorter 1-minute versions, I'll include a link to that in the description below. Or you can click on the short version of this video, which should appear in a box right about here, and that will take you to that channel where you can subscribe from there. And if you enjoyed the content of this video, please hit the like button right about here. And that's it. Thank you for watching.